What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below, or use my QR code right here to sign up. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free Nvidia stock. If you deposit $2,000 or more, you're going to get $50 worth of Nvidia. Deposits $10,000 to get $300 worth of Nvidia, or deposit $50,000 or more to get $1,000 of free Nvidia stock. You're also going to qualify for a 3.6% APY base rates plus a 4.5% APY extra for 3 months, making it a total of an 8.1% APY. The offer ends very soon, so please check out my links down below to sign up or use this QR code. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the overall market. So the market got this nice bounce as we had some big news that came out involving the government shutdown. The Senate has come up with an agreement to help end the government shutdown. Although the government shutdown is still in effect, we're still waiting on the House and President Trump to sign the deal after that. And there are some updates that just came out, which I'm going to talk about in the next couple of minutes. So let's break this down. I want to make it very clear that the market got this nice break so far. We mentioned that if SPY could hold above 678, we're expecting the 680s. But if we lost to 675, we're looking for a dip to fill the gap back down to 672. SPY got a nice break right here, but notice how we have this trend line right here acting as resistance, and we have not broken key resistance yet to be super bullish, to break out for like 685 and basically all-time highs. Now, it's possible we just continue to break out, but we need confirmation of a break first. And at the same time, even if we don't really get the breakout yet, it's still possible the market's going to pivot and we're forming a much larger inverse head and shoulders like this, which could be indicative of some downside in case we do get a rejection, or if we come back down to fill this gap. That would be very, very healthy before potentially seeing a nice recovery and a nice bounce after that. So we'll talk about the levels in a lot more detail in the next couple of minutes. We have a very similar setup on the QQQ as well. But let's first talk about the government shutdown news and everything else that's coming out. The reason why the market has gapped up and started to run is because the US Senate has come up with an agreement on Sunday night, which is once again going to help end the government shutdown. Many sources suggest that, and on top of this, it looks like the majority of senators came out and voted in favor of the new agreements. We had 60 votes to clear the Senate, and that is what we've gotten so far. However, despite this agreement passing the Senate, we're not necessarily in the clear just yet. The market's obviously optimistic about this, but we're waiting for the House. The House of Representatives has to go over this. And then once the House approves this, then President Trump will sign this into law, which will officially reopen the government. Based off what I'm seeing so far, the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, came out and he mentioned that as of right now, they are going to vote on the overall agreements to reopen the government, but they have not formally scheduled a date yet. So I do believe it's going to be in the upcoming days. They're going to be coming up with the votes, getting everything ready. It takes some time to get everything ready, but as of right now, we don't have an official date yet. We're just waiting for them to schedule everything. And very soon, the House is going to urge all the representatives to come together and vote upon this agreement to pass it as soon as possible to fund the government and to reopen things. The overall agreement is going to open the government up until the month of January, giving them plenty of time to renegotiate another deal. And that's going to be very, very important for the rest of the year. So hopefully we get this passed as soon as possible. We're still waiting on the House. And there's also some news that came out from President Trump. So let me just scroll up to where he was speaking. President Trump also said that with what's going on so far, he is going to abide by the deal, and the deal is very good. That's what President Trump has said. That's very important because he mentioned that he wants them to reopen the country as soon as possible. And he mentioned that we have the support from enough Democrats and we're going to be reopening our country. So that's what President Trump has said. He's going to abide by the deal. So that's a very, very important claim by him. As we're waiting to see what's about to happen from the House, that's going to be the next step. Hopefully they get this passed as soon as possible in the upcoming days. And then President Trump will sign this into law, which will once again put an end to the government shutdown officially. But as of right now, this news was very optimistic for the markets because we're seeing more liquidity being drawn into the markets, and this is helping the market bounce for the time being. Now, even though we have bounced, there is still some tough resistance to watch for, and I'll talk about that in just a few minutes, and then we'll see how the market ends up responding. Besides that, tomorrow is going to be Tuesday, November 11th, 2025. We basically have the Business Optimism Index report coming out in the morning. And then we have the ADP employment change coming out at 8:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This employment data may cause some volatility, so be ready for that just to be safe. Besides that, for earnings, it's very, very quiet. There's not really much data coming out for today or tomorrow. Everything is going to be very, very quiet for the week, except for Thursday when we have Walt Disney announcing their earnings. On Thursday, we have Disney, which is going to be very important. Last but not least, fear is making up the majority of sentiment, but the market's becoming less fearful than before. And momentum is at greed right now, so we're still seeing some buyers coming back. And on top of this, the put to call option ratio hit extreme fear. Typically, when this happens, that is when the market forms bottoms. And finally, the VIX is back to neutral as we're retesting our 50 daily moving average. So that's another sign the VIX is rejecting and the market's back to bullish. But we need some confirmation. And I'm going to talk about exactly what that is. So overall, okay, SPY had a flag that was forming right over here, and that's a good sign because now we're showing signs that we want to break out of this flag. However, I'm also eyeing something else. Typically, when you're bearish, right, you want to make lower highs and lower lows just like this. And for the first time, we're doing something different. We broke structure, and the market looks like it wants to break out as we took out this resistance right here at 672 and 675. Now, it's possible that if we're bullish, okay, heading into tomorrow, if we remain bullish, if the market is very optimistic about the government shutdown ending, we need to break and hold above 682. That's going to be the next step. Break and hold 682. And we could be looking for 686 next as our resistance. In case that level breaks, that's going to be the next target. So keep that level in mind. But if we're bearish, if you want to be bearish for the market, you want to see us take out 678 to 675. If that range fails us, we're looking for the gap fill back down to 682. And then we're going to see if we bounce off that or not, as we have a possible inverse head and shoulders. Now, the bearish case would be us basically failing at 672 and just continuing to reject like that. But I don't think that's as likely right now. I think that there's going to be a new wave of optimism with the government shutdown ending. And once again, as we approach the end of the year, the market's known for being bullish. We're almost in the middle of November, and then we just have like a few weeks left of November. Then December, which is known for being very bullish, is coming. I think the market's going to be making new all-time highs. However, before we break out to new all-time highs, we still have quite a distance away from all-time highs. But keep in mind that I would like to see us come down first. I could be wrong about this, so watch your levels just for confirmation. But I would like to see us retest that 675 to 672 area before we try to break out. It would be very, very much a blessing if we come down again, because this would be a really good buying opportunity for the end of the year squeeze. I'd like to see a move like this. I think this is very likely because I think 682 is a tough resistance. And maybe the employment data that comes out in the morning causes us to slow down. A move like this would be very, very healthy. We could push a little bit higher than come down like this. If we get some kind of rejection near the 682 range, we could be looking for 678 to 675. And maybe this gap fill, because this is looking like a left shoulder, a head, and then the right shoulder for a perfect inverse head and shoulders for a true reversal. That would be a very, very good sign. So I think I'm leaning more bullish now. Whether we just, break out from here, we just, go straight up to new all-time highs, or if we come down a bit first, I do think it would be very healthy to come down like this, and I would like to see this. I'd like to see SPY come down to 675 to 672 one more time, and then we could be looking for a monstrous bounce to close off the year, and we could be breaking out to the 700s by December pretty easily after that. So we'll see how it goes. Watch this resistance to see if we break 682 or not. If we don't, we could be dipping back down towards 678, if not this gap fill. And I'd like to see us fill the gap first before we continue to break out. I think that's the most likely possibility. So keep that in mind. On the QQQ, we also have a perfect looking inverse head and shoulders almost. We have a nice left shoulder. We have a head. And then the question is, will we form this right shoulder to fill the gap and then we break out like this? That's very possible. But it all depends on the levels. So if we break and hold above 625, then we could go straight up to fill the gap at 629. That's the more bullish case. If we just break 625, we could just keep going. But the bearish case is going to be that we come down to like 619. If we lose that 619 to 617 range, there is a gap to fill at 612. If we come down to fill that gap, it's going to be another buying opportunity, another big blessing, and that could help this market reaccumulate to form this inverse head and shoulders. So it depends on how we end up reacting tomorrow to this government shutdown news. I would like to see us come down a bit first. I could be wrong about that, but if this inverse head and shoulders forms, that would be a good buying opportunity. So we'll see if we reject near 625 or not, but this would be a nice inverse head and shoulders for a bounce. So we'll see if that ends up being the case or not. So just keep that in mind. Watch your levels and we'll see how it goes. On the IWM, we have the same thing going on. This could be an inverse head and shoulders reversal. This could be our left shoulder. This could be the head, and see how we're consolidating at resistance. If we break 246, we're looking for a big break. If we don't, we could revisit 240, and then we could be bouncing off that to make a higher low and form the inverse head and shoulders. I'm looking for a move like this, but just to be safe, watch that 246 resistance, and we'll see if we get the bounce. On ES, we're at resistance right here at 68.60. If we break this, we could keep going, and we could be looking for 6,900 next. I would like to see us come down a little bit to fill this gap. I think I'd prefer that scenario. If we get a rejection, we come back down to fill the gap at 67.65, and then we reaccumulate, and then we close off the month / year with a very, very bullish move. I would think that's a lot more likely. On NQ, we also have a very, very nice setup. We have resistance at 25,825. If we break that, we're going to be going higher. If not, we have a gap to fill back down at 25,250. And we're going to see if we come down to fill that gap first before we continue to break out. Either way, I'm leaning more bullish. I think we're looking for new all-time highs, but we will see if we come down first before we get that break, so keep that in mind. On Bitcoin, we have a nice looking double bottom. We have resistance at 106,600, and we have support down here at 104,000, so we'll see if we reject. Hopefully, we try to rebound, and we'll see how it goes as we reaccumulate to push for 109,000. For Tesla, we look decent overall. Tesla's been making lower highs. We need to lose 420 to be more bearish. But as of right now, it looks like Tesla's trying to bounce. We could come down and retest 440, if not 435. But then Tesla could still reaccumulate and form an inverse head and shoulders and eventually bounce back up to like the 450s. It's very possible Tesla dips and bounces. Nvidia is looking more bullish. We're going to be likely testing 200 or so. Then I'd like to see us retest this gap over here around that 190 area, if not 194. And then we're going to be looking for a nice reversal to push to new all-time highs like this. I think there's a very good chance of that potentially happening. Apple's consolidating. We have support at 267 and resistance at 275. I think this might be retesting 267, and it consolidates for some time before it potentially breaks out higher for another leg up. As you could tell, sometimes Apple likes to consolidate before it breaks out. It likes to consolidate before potentially breaking out higher again for the end of the year. For Netflix, we have a nice looking double bottom. As long as we don't lose 1100, we could reaccumulate and eventually push for 1132. On MSTR, we're also range bound right here. We have a slanted inverse head and shoulders. We have a support at 228, and we're going to see if we bounce near 230 for a rebound for 245. On Celsius, we have a nice looking divergence. We're going to be looking for a attempt for 46. If that breaks, we have 49 as our potential target. Supermicro has a slanted inverse head and shoulders. Might consolidate here before it tries to bounce back up to 42.5 very soon. On Palantir, Palantir. We also have an inverse head and shoulders forming. We have a left shoulder, a head right here. We might come down to form that right shoulder, and then we could be looking for a nice rebound. I'd like to see a move like that to close off the year. We're going to see if that ends up being the case. Rivian is looking more bullish. We came down only to bounce. We're going to be looking for a retest of like 15.5. Then we could be looking for another rebound for the 17s. On SoFi, we're looking more bullish. We have resistance right here around 31. We're going to see if we break that. If not, we could be retesting 29.1. And then we could be looking for another reversal, right, for an inverse head and shoulders. We could be retesting 29.1 before it tries to rebound. On AMD, we're looking quite bullish. It would be very healthy if we fill this gap first before we try to bounce and eventually break out for 252 or above. For ARM, we could be retesting a 153, then we'll see if we bounce back up towards 156. There might be a temporary dip. On PayPal, we're trading sideways. We have support at 65 and resistance around 69. It might consolidate here before it tries to bounce. Coinbase may retest this support down here around the low 300s, and then we're looking for an inverse head and shoulders reversal back up towards 330. On Amazon, we basically have an inverse head and shoulders, could retest 245 before it starts bouncing back up for the 250s. Meta also has an inverse head and shoulders. It could be retesting essentially 622. Then we'll see if we bounce back up for 640. Google looks more bullish to me. It has a nice looking double bottom. And if we lose 283, we could be dipping more. So long as we hold this, though, it could rebound here and start pushing back up to 294. For Microsoft, we need to try to hold above 505. If that holds, we're looking for 512. And then finally, for the VIX, we are showing some weakness. Now, it's possible that the VIX has a head and shoulders. So this is like a left shoulder. This is like a head. If we get a temporary bounce in the VIX, that would be very, very nice to fill this gap. And then we could be looking for a reversal back down like this for a head and shoulders to close off the year. That is very possible, and that could be a sign that the market wants to go higher. So we'll see how it goes. The dollar is starting to consolidate right here. We're going to see if this bounces a bit, which could be indicative of some downside for the markets. And then we're also waiting for the 10-year, which is going to be reacting to our employment data for tomorrow and other pieces of data. So for now, if SPY is bullish, we need to break 682 to continue to push for 686. But I would prefer if we come down. I'd like to see us come down first for like these EMA retests or even this gap fill first before it tries to break out. Either way, it's bullish. Okay, we're likely going to all-time highs in December. Whether we come down first and then bounce, or if we just bounce from here, all-time highs are likely coming for SPY and the QQQ. On the QQQ, there is a gap up here, but there's also a gap down below. If this is symmetrical, this could be like a really nice left shoulder, head and right shoulder that's forming before we try to bounce. So we will see how it ends up going. With that being said, I want to thank you all so much for listening. I hope you guys have a very awesome rest of your guys' days. And I think that we're going to be watching for a big test on SPY and the QQQ at these levels. Will the QQQ break 625 or reject? Will SPY break 682 or reject? I would like to see us reject and come down to fill the gaps, but we'll see just to be safe. So be very unbiased, watch your levels, and just wait and see what ends up happening as time goes on. If we come down a bit, of course, there's going to be a nice opportunity for us to get a nice bounce. So just keep that in mind as time goes on. That could be a nice opportunity for the end of the year squeeze that's coming, in my opinion. So thank you all so much for listening. Please enjoy the rest of your guys' days, and I'll be back very soon with another update for tomorrow before the stock market opens. Until then, I wish you all nothing but the best, and peace out.